This video is sponsored by Cloudbounce. More about them later. Hey, and welcome back to this third video about how old tape machines worked. I'm Espen Kraft, thank you so much for watching. If you remember a couple of weeks back, I released two videos about old school Porta Studios, 4-track recorders and tape sync. You can watch those videos here. And in those videos, I showed you how you used a sync signal to sync up the sequencer to the tape recorder. It had some flaws. You had to start the tape from the top every time to sync up your sequencer. Today, I'm going to show you how reel-to-reel recorders work with SMPTE, another more advanced timecode we used back in the day that lets you start the tape from wherever you want and the sequencer will always be in sync. So in today's video, to really get some good things going, I'm going to use the Atari 1040 ST with the Uniter sync box and this beautiful Fostex Model 80 8-track reel-to-reel recorder, which I have on loan from Anders Jensen. Thank you, by the way. And I'm going to put a SMPTE sync signal into this, and I'm going to sync this up with the notator sequencer on the Atari, just as I did back in the day in the late 80s and early 90s to get some multi-track tape recordings going. So this is going to be great fun, so let's go. The Uniter comes with two extra in and out ports, E and F, and multi-expansion port, and those jacks for the SMPTE code in and out. And the Uniter also works as a dongle for the notator software itself. It plugs right into the cartridge port on the Atari ST. It snaps into place as well, so it's going to stick there. And then you hook up the jack cables, providing a express highway for the SMPTE timecode going back and forth between the tape recorder and the computer, in this case the Atari. At this point, I'm also going to set up the E port on the Uniter to drive the MIDI out to the drum machine I'm going to use. And then I load up the notator software. And here we are, Notator 2.2 from 1989. So I'm setting up the BPMs to 112. And I'm configuring the MIDI port E, channel 10, to drive the Ayla S2400 over MIDI. The S2400 is going to provide the drums for us in this track I'm making. Making a little track is a more fun way of showing how the SMPTE timecode works in a few minutes. I've already hooked up the Roland Alpha Juno through MIDI in on the Atari, so that'll work as a master keyboard. And I'm setting the quantize for those drums to 16ths from the get-go. So these are the drums I have available for me in this kit on the S2400 right now. So let's record that hi-hat first at 112 BPMs. So that's automatically quantized to 16ths. I'm going to loop that for 1 bar. A very simple task in Notator, just setting that loop value to 1. And it's looping indefinitely. And this is definitely not a kick, so let me just rename that track name to hats. But let's get that kick going straight away. Again, on the E port, channel 10. So let's record that kick. And that is automatically quantized as well to 16ths. And let's loop that as well. The value of 4 only looped the 1 bar. I want to loop every 2 bars, so I get those variations with me as well. So that's the kick. So let's do the snare. That'll do nicely. That's really bad timing there, but luckily I have it on automatic 16ths in the quantize. And let's go with that clap. Yeah, just one clap. And the tambourine. And now we have a little drum loop going. So let's do some pads from the alpha. I waited a few bars there to get that swell coming up at the end of the sound. And I'll quantize that to 16ths as well. I want this to be tight with the drums. So now we have a pattern 1 that runs from bar 1 through 21. And I could of course have made different patterns, but if you check out the left side of the notator window, we have an arrange mode. And we use that to arrange patterns in the sequential order we want them played. So if I had a bunch of different patterns, I could chain those together in any order I want. But now I only have pattern 1, so I'll set that, copy that, and say that it will be repeated at bar 21. So now instead of pattern play, I set it into arrange play by pressing on and press start. So check out what happens when it reaches bar 21 in the arrange window. It repeats pattern 1 like I told it to. So that's a very powerful way of using notator, and we use this a lot. So we need some bass. I'll pull out the TX-802. I'll just call it DX for short. And let's record some bass. I cut that recording short, but let's play that back. And let's play with the velocity and compress setting to get a little bit more bite out of the DX bass. So this is all MIDI velocity and MIDI compression. So that's the bass in the can. This is all MIDI going on here. There's no audio at play here. A MIDI sequencer from the 80s. And at this point, it's a good idea to save the song. And this is of course saved on a floppy. This Atari ST has a German OS installed. I'm not German, by the way. I'm from Norway, but I understand German to some extent. It's not rocket science to save your song on a floppy, no matter what the language, really. And that process left me with nothing less of 705 kilobytes left on my floppy. Yoo-hoo! And now let the excitement begin. Now I'm going to show you the SMPTE timecode and how that works. But let's first have a look at my sponsor for this video, Cloudbounce. Cloudbounce is your mastering tool that is available 24/7 wherever you go. You upload your audio file, and the Cloudbounce mastering engine analyzes it and applies just the right amount of various audio processing ingredients to make it sound powerful and crystal clear. This is made possible by new technology that employs machine listening, classification, and different audio processing tools, such as compressor, EQ, limiter, and stereo imaging. Various templates or custom mastering style adjustments are readily available within the user interface. Flexible pricing plans are suitable for every need. Pick either pay-as-you-go or save with a subscription plan. So check out Cloudbounce. I'll leave my affiliation link in the video description. Since we're going to record that SMPTE timecode on tape, well, we need tape. And let's open up a box with a brand new roll of tape from ATR Magnetics. So first I have to put this reel onto the left side of the tape machine, and I have an alignment hole to help me do that. And then I'll secure the reel. Here it's a threaded affair. On other tape machines it could be a clamp you just clamp on. And then I have to thread the tape in a particular way so that the tape will go past the erase head and recording head in the tape recorder. If you've never done this before, it'll take some trying, but it's not rocket science. Just take your time and then you'll do fine. The most fickly part here is securing that end of the tape to that taking reel. Some like to just spool it around the taking reel, but I like to secure the end of the tape in those gaps in the taking reel itself. There are a couple of small gaps where you can thread that end tape and then roll it over to secure the tape on the taking reel, like I'm doing here. And then you just manually roll over those reels a couple of rounds, and then you can fast forward the tape electronically to get past any fingerprints or bad tape at the beginning of the reel. And then you're ready to record. This low-level consumer-grade Fostex Model 80 has phono RCA jacks in and out. So now the drum machine and synths are hooked up to this through the line inputs. I have the jacks going out to that uniter, providing SMPTE back and forth. And the outs are going to my preamps and into the DAW. So the first thing we would do back in the day when starting a session with tape and timecode was to stripe that first channel with timecode, or the last channel, and leave the adjacent channel free of anything so that timecode would not bleed into any track with sound on it. So now I'm enabling track 8 for recording, and into track 8 comes the output of the uniter that will provide the SMPTE timecode any second now. So back in the notator software, I go into options, synchronization, and I have the SMPTE/EBU synchronization reference window open. And here I can set different parameters. The most important now is that the tempo is set to 112 because I'm using a fixed tempo here. I'm setting the frames to 25 since I'm in Europe and PAL land. If you're in the US and you're using NTSC, you'd set it to 30, or if you're working with film, you'd set it to 24. If this was only meant for music, it really doesn't matter. If I now press start, the uniter will start outputting that SMPTE timecode through the jack out, SMPTE jack out. So now I'll start the recording by pressing record and play on track 8 on the Fostex. So that is recording. Let's go back to notator and the synchronization window and press start. And it says start record on tape. I'm doing that already. Okay. And that's the SMPTE timecode you're hearing. Check top right, the timecode is running. So if your song is 4 minutes at this time, Make sure you record the signal for at least 5 or 6 minutes. You never know if you're going to expand the song later. Better to have more timecode than too little later on. And the sound of this timecode signal clearly shows that it's important to have that the adjacent channel free of that sound. You don't want that to bleed into your soft pad, and you definitely want your hard drums to interfere with the timecode signal. So I recorded this for about 3 minutes now. And that's fine because my demo song was about 1 minute, give or take. Okay, so let's rewind the tape now and go back to the start and see if Notator can pick up on the timecode, the SMPTE signal I just recorded on track 8 on the Fostex. Now I'm going to run this back into the uniter through the in jack port. To have the sync signal as clear as possible, it's advised to not use any mixers to record or play back the sync signal. Luckily, the uniter sync box is not too picky about the signal strength, but some sync boxes might be that, so you just have to check out the manual for those. So now we have to verify that Notator can read the sync signal coming back, so I put this in not internal sync, but on SMPTE sync. And if you check out the time here now, when I play back that tape, it should start running when it receives the SMPTE time code signal. So we rewound our tape to a time before we recorded the sync signal. And let's see what happens now. That's the signal coming out. And Notator receives the SMPTE code just fine, but the sequencer doesn't start. Wasn't that the whole point of this, having the sequencer in sync with the tape? Yes, it is. But you have to create a reference track for that, and that's what I'm doing now. So this is a time-consuming process, and it was back then as well. But luckily, there's just one more thing I have to do, and that is to press Create. And by doing that, I create that sync reference track in Notator for this song. And that's it. It even created that reference track, which can be saved and loaded back later if you want to. So the SMPTE code will start at 59 minutes, 55 seconds, 0 frames. And when it reaches 1 hour, it will start the sequencer at bar 1. So the sequencer will not start immediately when it receives SMPTE timecode. I'll leave 5 seconds to have other gears synchronized up as well before it actually starts playing. That's very important when using timecode like this. So here we go again. I press play on tape, and the sync signal is coming out any minute. There it is. 5 seconds later, check out the time reference window in Notator. On 1 hour, the sequencer will start. And it did. It's like magic. And all the tracks are playing just fine, as they should. So the last thing I'm going to do now is to start the tape again from the beginning, before the timecode. And I'm just going to zero out, reset the manual counter on the Fostex, on the tape recorder, with the SMPTE in the sequencer itself, right about now. The Funk Soul Brother, check it out now. So now if I just fast forward on the tape a bit, you'll see that the times are synchronized, and that's the beauty of SMPTE timecode versus simple tape sync. Now we can start the tape from anywhere and the sequencer will follow in perfect sync. As you can see. Fast forward, rewind, the sequencer will always follow the SMPTE code from the tape. Just to be clear, if you check out the time on the sequencer now, it says 49 seconds, while on the Fostex it says 48. Now the time display on this Fostex, a low-level consumer-grade tape recorder back in the day, this is just like a speedometer on an old car. This is just an analog clock, tape clock on this Fostex. The sync signal and the sequencer is in perfect sync on the frame. And so now I can record some instruments, some of the synths and drum machines on tape if I want to, and I don't have to worry about the sequencer and changing things in the sequencer later because it'll always be in sync with what I record on tape. So let's record some of the sounds I have in this sequence already. Here's the sync signal, and it's driving the sequencer. Okay, so I've recorded 2 passes, those 2 patterns like you remember from the arrange window earlier. So now I'll just rewind the tape and play that back to check out how it actually sounds coming from tape. Up until now, you've only heard the sounds coming directly out of the synths through the preamps of this Fostex. Now it's coming back from the tape. And the SMPTE can also handle tape pitch variations. And so to finalize this track, I'm using one more MIDI out on the uniter to drive the Juno 106 over MIDI. I'm going to play it from the Alpha Juno as before. But I want to add some more sounds, one more sound to the arrangement. So let's do that. Well, I'm gonna repeat myself because I've said this a lot of times, but this has been so much fun. Tape recordings, the old Atari, syncing, wires, cables, problems, hookups, cable mess. Well, it's so inspiring, really. I don't hate it at all. I love working out of the box with this old gear, wrestling with this old gear. Unless you're trying to sync up analog gear like tape, film or broadcast gear, you don't really have to worry about timecode, SMPTE, tape sync and that stuff anymore. If you're working in the box in a DAW, the DAW takes care of all this synchronization stuff for you. You don't have to know any of this really. But I like showing it off. I like to tell the younger generation how we did it back in the day, and I hope you found this both exciting and entertaining at the same time. I sure had a lot of fun making this video, I can tell you. As always, if you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. And I'm Espen Kraft and I am the 80s. So thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time. Cheers! Ah, this is so nice.